Well, hello and welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for Silverton Speaker Series episode. I'm Corey Knight, Director of Sales Training and Development here at Silverton Mortgage, and I have the pleasure of hosting this episode. I'm delighted to introduce you our esteemed guest speaker, Ted Rutland, Manager for Social Responsibility for Clayton, which Clayton is known as the eighth largest home builder in the nation. With a 14-year tenure at Clayton, Ted has been instrumental in transforming the company's approach to social responsibility, volunteerism, and community presence, from elevating social responsibility efforts through compelling storytelling to deliver real-world outcomes, such as leading out 18 home donations and helping launch a company-wide volunteer program that's seen over 260,000, lots of zeros, hours of volunteering in the local communities. Ted helps to shape Clayton's commitment to being a force for good. Ted has an MBA from Lincoln Memorial University, a certificate of social responsibility from the University of Colorado, and is also the Blount County Chair of the Board for National Nonprofit Family Promise. Now, the session that Ted and I will be going through will last 30 to 45 minutes. If you have questions, there's a Q&A button. If you could please use it at the top of your screen and ask your question. We have staff monitoring and collecting your questions throughout the session so that we can do a Q&A at the end. We are recording this episode, so it will be available on Silverton Mortgage LinkedIn for future viewing. Now, let's just jump right into the meat and potatoes, because Ted, one thing, you have a very interesting story on not just doing this and why you're presenting it, but it's your lifetime that you've done. So, Ted, could you please tell us a personal story, how participating in volunteer work, your family's commitment to volunteer work, help their small business grow? And not only that, but it got you to where you are today, where you're leading this for 22,000 plus employees. Can you tell us about the grassroots of how this started and this passion for you?
Absolutely. One, thank you for having me on. I appreciate it. I appreciate any opportunity to talk about social responsibility. It's an exciting time. I'm excited to share, try to share this with the group today. I think for me personally, this was intertwined in what our family did. I remember growing up, I would take, boxes of a box of food for a food drive at our elementary school. I remember working with mom and dad, cooking Thanksgiving meals at different churches and passing that out to the congregation, passing it out to community members. It was intertwined in what we personally did. And like you said, my dad was a small business owner. He ran a car parts, exotic car parts business of about 10 people. And so twice a year he would host a car show. And so that car show was really important to him. It was really important for networking. It was really important to meet his clients, have his clients come view the shop, see his inventory. It really mattered for not only sales, but for his image and reputation. Dad also had a real big passion for giving people second chances. And so he knew he needed more people to work these events. And so there's an organization that was there in Atlanta that worked with people who were just left incarceration that needed some job experience before they got back out into the economy. And that's who we wanted to work with. So he would hire 3 to 4 people from that organization who would bring the head of that organization down so they could, mingle and interact with clients, and he would treat, those people from the organization who needed that help just like team members. They were an extension of the team. You could tell it meant a lot to his people, getting to give back to the community like that. He wanted to make sure they had a good time. He took them for rides in the cars afterwards. There was just a passion and an authenticity that he had. And I think what's important for us to note is that he was still known for hosting great events. So he didn't sacrifice his reputation or sacrifice quality, for, engaging the community. It was a mutual ROI. It worked out for both the organization because they were able to help people. They're able to gain, some notoriety and learn, gain some exposure. And it helped Dad to execute a great event. And then think personally, just for him to see, step outside himself and give back. And that was just, as he grew his business, he was always known for those great events. And I think that's what led me to really see the marriage between giving back to the community and business goals. That is, I think that's something that's together. That's why I'm really blessed to work at Clayton. I think what's been really exciting to see is, Clayton's, position on authentic partnerships. We want to be really authentic in the community, empowering our team members, like you said, with the volunteer program. And so it's been great to grow in this space from the foundation that I have, and to find a company like Clayton that's let me grow in these passions. And it truly believes that if your values first, that has a benefit for the community and an absolute benefit for your business.
Well, one thing that's incredible when you think about it, if your dad is known for such events, you think he'd hire, like, especially if exotic car parts, he'd hire the best catering, the best
Yeah.
everything to handle it. But instead, he went to community help, said, no, these people need a chance, and I believe in them. And in return, I mean, he got the because when they're coming out, they need a boost of confidence, everything. So that is
Right.
fantastic that your dad took something that the business had needed in order to
Yeah.
survive, and instead of just paying to have like the best of the best, he went to volunteer and made it the best, help make it the best. So that's awesome to hear, the fact that, he made his career, and the two big things a year that he did it by giving back. So now, of course, we've talked about this social responsibility. Now we need to define it, because social responsibility can go so many different thoughts in today's world. It's like, what is it? Is it this? Is it that? So if you can, Ted, please define social responsibility so we can dive into it a little bit more.
For sure. So social responsibility is a business strategy that helps a business focus in on its social and environmental impact, as well as its economic and business goals, meaning that all of those making sure that you're aligning your impact and your goals together. So that's really what social responsibility is. And like you said, it can be defined differently for a lot of people. What we know is we know that consumers find it really important. It says there's a recent study said 77% of consumers want to interact with a company that is giving back, whether that's volunteerism or through giving. And I think what the stat doesn't define is, what does that organization mean, or what organizations do consumers want you to go to? And you won't find that, but what you'll see is they want you to be authentic. They want you to be authentic in what you're doing, because that definition of where you should give is broad. And
Mhm.
it's really what you can see. And we find this with the general public. You also find this with employees, is when you're authentic, that's what really matters. So social responsibility is just considering that impact and really making sure that your business goals also help give back to that community.
Okay, so basically, it's what you're giving to the community, and what you can do to benefit them, and knowing that you may or may not get a return out of it. But one return, of course, I think is always the joy of giving, because you never feel bad when you're giving. So
Well, and
so go ahead. Sorry.
I would say too that it can really align with those goals. And I think it's what we'll talk about more, down the road, that companies that end up giving back. And when I say companies, I want this too to relate this. When we say company can be defined as you're a one person company. That's your small business. That's your company, to a multinational corporation. When you're giving back and you're aligning that with your business goals, there are definite business benefits. We see this, of course, with, employee retention. You see this with your community presence. You see this with reputation management. There's some of those soft KPIs that are going to be really important, as you're continuing to grow, that you'll see that mutual benefit, really that mutual ROI. That's why it's really important to as you're going about this work, to be really intentional, be authentic, and really do your research.
Okay, one thing I'm glad that you said, you talk about business owners, and I think a lot of time, like, because I know we have real estate agents on here, we have mortgage loan originators, and they forget that they are a self-employed company. Builders, this is it. It's just me. What am I going to do, and how am I going to give back? Because they all know we're salespeople, but
Yeah.
it's sort of like, oh, they're only trying to sell. But when you're giving, that's, you don't have to talk about your business. People believe then in you. Am I correct? Start believing
Yeah.
in you, and that you are for more than just the next sale.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's exactly right. And I think when you start to think about social responsibility, sometimes you see headlines of, big, you see like $500 million given here and there, and we immediately turn off because we don't have that kind of capital, or we don't have that kind of funding. But I'm really here to say that the local time that you would give to volunteering, or the local, whatever that amount is that you are giving, that really makes an impact in your local community. That community presence is really important. And any small thing you do makes a real difference, not only from a business perspective, but you think too, just from who you are as as a person, helps open up that space for gratitude in your mind, which can take down anxiety, and you're really aligning, which we'll talk about later, your own team member experience, which elevates that customer experience.
That's
I
great.
think when, oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead. No, please.
I was just thinking, as you're thinking about, as you're starting this, what does this look like for me? What does this look like for my business? I think there's a couple of things. First is authenticity. I think the first thing as you're growing this is, how are you going to be authentic? So what causes are meaningful to you? I think that's one that's great about our, Clayton's volunteer program. There is team members are given 8 hours to go volunteer at causes that are meaningful to them. And I think that is a practice you can take into your own business. Where are you passionate about? Are you passionate about food pantries? Do you need to go volunteer at a food bank? Are you passionate about disaster relief? Do you want to work with Red Cross or Samaritan's Purse or a local nonprofit there? Is it veterans? There are so many nonprofits that can help your passion area. And I think it's fine determining what is my passion area. And then that helps determine what are your pillars? What are you wanting to give towards? So you're setting up this parameter of, okay, I'm willing to volunteer, once a month or once a quarter at this place. Where I want to volunteer is going to be aligned with these pillars. And we're really about helping out veterans who are returning from service. And so that's where we're going to go volunteer, or that's where I want to go volunteer as a business. And so you've set those parameters. And then when you go, then you think about your approach. That's the next part, is your approach. What are you wanting to do? Again, like we said, volunteering, giving of your time is just as impactful, if not more impactful sometimes, than funding. So it doesn't have to cost anything monetarily. It can cost time, but it doesn't have to cost anything monetarily. So what are you going to do? You're willing to, if you start out like, I'm willing to volunteer, and then that may grow into some board involvement, may grow into some community presence, but knowing just what you're capable or what you really have capacity for first, as you go down the road, that way you don't get yourself burn out.
Right.
And then,
well, one thing I do like is what you said with having the pillars and to be authentic is, people will know if you show up to help and you are not into it.
Yeah.
I mean, but it's also like, going back to it with it is the impact it makes on you and others. Because you even said, like, being volunteering the littlest time. For example, like 2 weeks ago, we rescued a dog. And we were looking at the rescues and going, okay, we're going to rescue a dog this time rather than get a dog. And we're looking through, and then as we're going to these shelters here in the metro Atlanta area, we're finding out people are volunteering time. Just that they come, they walk the dogs. They come and they foster them for a week, so they're not in the shelter. And the thing that was so amazing when we finally picked our dog is how many people came out to thank us. And even the next day, I went back the next day to take care of something, and people were coming out and said, I heard you're the one that adopted. Great. Thank you. It really is something that it just made me, I wasn't even volunteering, but all of the volunteers were it's just kind of really amazing how authentic they were, but they had that passion for it. And the people that are coming in going, one lady stopped me. She goes, I used to walk them. Are you fostering? I said, no, we're keeping them. And she started crying. So it was great, So it's great when you talk about these things, being authentic to who you are, but also what you're passionate about. So I know you said there's 3 different things to consider. You talked about authentic, and you're talking about like your giving approach. Like, so it's not all about money, because some of us right now, market's down a little bit, and the purse strings are tight, but time is there, and really it's time you want to spend with people anyway. Am I correct? Because it's that time you spend that relationships are built. Can you talk about that a little bit more? And because I know you've done stuff with Habitat and some other things, could you dive into that and the time spent and the passion there?
Absolutely. I think when you spend, so I can speak from my experience when I've gone and volunteered with my team. When you take time, you're volunteering with a group, you're taking time to talk about something else that's other than what you normally talk about, and you're all coming together for a cause. That creates a bond. It creates something that you can relate to. And you think about that from an LO or a realtor perspective. If you're going out there, maybe you want to bring a partner. along. You're like, hey, I know we work together a lot. Let's go volunteer together. It creates those relationships, and then that's also mutually beneficial to the organization. That organization, that executive director they're in need of volunteers, and so you're doing something that's benefiting them, and it benefits you. I think it creates that bond of something that's greater and bigger than you, and it shows that your purposes are aligned. So I mean, for me, I work at a home builder. I've been a part of this home building journey now for 14 years. Volunteering at places like Habitat for Humanity are meaningful to me because that's another way to extend and provide home ownership. I just know it's so important, like for my kids to have a safe place to call home. I want other people to have that opportunity. And so that's why it's authentic to me. And there you can just, but you start to see those benefits. And I think that's where that you have that space. And you're right. You get thanked from the executive director. I go in the community, go to a Walmart, like, oh, hey, we've seen each other at a volunteer site. It's good. It's good to see you. There is that community presence that really starts to build.
I agree because you just kind of reminded me of like we do me and my family we pack bags
Mhm.
for basically for women's shelters and stuff like that because my wife for 8 years was director of victim services for a county here in Georgia, and so that is her passion. So we go, all the kids are in because they all know that's what mommy did, that's what mommy helped out with and everything. And it is neat, especially when when they put that together, and then you have all these adults coming up to the kids and you're like, thank you for helping, and they're just beaming,
Yeah.
and all they did was stick food and stuff in these little bags and draw on them and write little notes and stuff. So that is great because again, that kind of it fits with who you are, so everyone can have their own fit according, and it may have nothing to do with your industry, am I correct? It's
That's
just kind
right.
of what you're
Yeah.
passionate about.
It's where you're passionate. It's where you're passionate about. It's where you're going to be able to give. It's where you're going to be invested in. And I think that, we've talked about community presence,
Mhm.
but as you're growing that, so say you become passionate about this organization, you want to do what's right for them. So they could have a volunteer event and then you're on this committee that's trying to get other volunteers. Well, you're the one now calling out to these local businesses, standing at these booths, talking to people in the community. They're starting to know they're knowing your name,
Oh,
associating it
wow.
with, of course, this organization, but they're starting to know you. They get to know you as a person. There's that mutual ROI where you're putting yourself out there as well, and you're helping this organization. It benefits both. And I think that that's those that community presence is a long term. Of course, it's a long game that
Right.
you're in. You need to always invest in that if you're going to have that presence. But that we all know that referrals, word of mouth, that means so much
Right.
to people when they're looking for, who am I going to choose to buy a house with? Who am I going to choose to, go work on this loan journey with? And that those relationships really matter. And there's just that space there that where you can do what you're passionate about and not have to sacrifice your business. I think that that's the main misconception I'm hoping to bridge today.
Right. No, no, that's perfect because really what you said is like you said to serve like on a chair, a committee, and calling local businesses. That's you networking at a different level, which doesn't feel like, okay, I got to tell them I'm an agent. I got to tell them I'm a loan originator. I got to tell. No, I guess what? Here's what I'm passionate about. We'd love for you to join. Now, you've covered two of the pillars. You've covered
Yeah.
about, well, not two, yes, two, well, two of the three main points you had
Strategies.
said.
Yeah.
So you talked about being authentic because that again, that will show sort of like with us helping with women's shelter, stuff like that, you helping with habitat. Even again, I go back to the dog thing. How many people when we posted we rescued a dog, actually send me messages. I don't even know these people on Facebook saying thank you for rescuing a dog. And
Yeah.
so I'm like, wow. So I made an impact on someone without even realizing it. The point where they're willing to stop and make message to me on it. What is the third?
Yeah, that
The
third one is it.
amplification you talked about.
It is. Yeah, amplification. You think about how you talk about the work you're doing. That's one thing I'm really love about the approach that Clayton has is putting the partner first and putting, the team member first. And so when you're amplifying and we're talking about a nonprofit, when you're talking about the work that they're doing, that's of course coming from your channel. It's coming from, you're speaking about that. Or if a partner is the one amplifying and talking about the work that you're doing, that could be from a partnership, from us. That's a partnership we created with a national nonprofit, but it could be from the local perspective, that them sharing a picture of of you all volunteering and being in this space. What's really important about amplification, we talked about this with authenticity, leading with the organization first, leading with the cause first. If you lead with yourself first, like we've said, people have got they've got a meter for inauthenticity, or like they're in it for the wrong reasons. When you're leading with the organization, one, that's what you want to do anyway. You want to elevate them, you want to elevate that cause. And then that also just that helps people to read that message. They want to read that message then when it's about the nonprofit. And then they associate you with that brand or with that cause. They start to, they make those associations.
Which, well, in some ways, that's sort of like, I love what you said. For one, let's talk about virtual endorsement, because when you're on there with you, they assume that, hey, we like them, they like us, we like our business together in some ways. And then, you have that, and then the being associated with something that this person is part of this and not real. It's sort of like that Facebook where you think you know everyone. Oh yeah, they're my friend. You meet, you talk to them, but there's a familiarity even though you've never met before. But in this case here, it's over a same passion.
That's right. Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, I think that you hit the nail on the head, that there is, when you can have that association, that people make those associations. You don't have to make that. You don't have to make that for them.
Right.
And that's usually where some people can trip up. But really leading with authenticity and making those partnerships. That's why I think when we'll talk about this next, but picking the right organization to work with is really key.
Right. All right. And one thing that I want to emphasize on, just a video popped into my head where people are helping homeless, but that shows them in the video, giving them the money. Like it's almost, look at me, look what I'm doing to help, rather than just saying, here you go, and you're tough luck right now, let me help you. So that's kind of where that meter, you know what meter I'm talking about, starts shooting up. So
yeah.
Okay. Well, now we've talked about what is social responsibility? What are the three things kind of really to develop, and what social responsibility is about? Now let's talk about, there's so many opportunities out there. There's probably some people on this call that go, where do I even start? So how do you decide on what to support, who to support, how often, everything like that?
I think, there's a couple of free resources out there. One that I really like is Charity Navigator. And with Charity Navigator, which we'll drop a link to that site here later, but you'll see you can search by cause, and then you can search by area. So you don't even have to search by the specific nonprofit. I could say, like we've talked about, food bank. So I could do food bank, Metro Atlanta, and it'll pop up 3 to 4 options. It'll give me a rating for the organization, which it bases off transparency of their financials, transparency of some of their policies. And so you'll be able to see, like, okay, this is a 3 or 4-star rated, nonprofit. That'll help give you a list. And I think it's really important then for you to do your research. Go on their socials, see what they're talking about, make sure they do align with what you align with. Make sure that they're not saying anything that could, harm your brand, or they're doing something that maybe doesn't align with who you are. Do that extra layer of vetting. And really that final layer of vetting, I think, for you is go volunteer, go talk to the executive director, learn a little bit more, create that relationship. And if it's not the right fit, then it's not the right fit. There's no timeline to this. I think it's really important. And I appreciate how Clayton approaches, nonprofit partners. We really want to look for that authentic relationship. Do we align on mission? Do we align on values? Are we pushing each other in the right direction? That's a principle from a corporation that could absolutely be used at a small business level, and making sure that you're just aligned, and then slowly growing that relationship over time. You can get burnt out real quick when you jump in and you're like, oh no, I've committed and I don't really need to be here. But that slow grow is so important. But yeah, those Charity Navigators are a fantastic resource.
Okay. Now let me ask you: is it okay to test drive them, to basically say, okay, I think this is kind of the area I want to go into, and I think where I want to volunteer? Is it okay just to show up once or twice and not show up anymore because it doesn't fit? Is that like a forbidden no? If you go, you must.
No, I think it's absolutely right, because then that's beneficial too to the executive director. No organization wants someone who's not going to be passionate or isn't fully bought into what they're doing. They want passionate people who are rallying around the same cause. So showing up somewhere, volunteering once or twice, and if you're like, this just isn't my fit, and you don't come back, that's okay too. That doesn't mean that they're a bad organization or that you're not doing the right thing. It just means you're not a match. And I think that's completely fine to do. I think it's better to find the right match than to stick with something and be like, I'm just going to make this, I'm going to make it work. That's when your authenticity starts to slip and people can see it.
Okay, yeah, because that's good. Because I'm sitting there thinking like, okay, if I show up once, and I'm like, it didn't really go, and they're like, we called it jerky, didn't even come back, and not realizing that they're like, okay, no, if this isn't a fit, please don't, because you're going to kill our vibe.
That's right. Yeah.
So okay, that's good to know. So everyone out there can know you're not a jerk if you don't go back, if it's not a fit for you. That they appreciate that. So, I can take that one a little bit easier. Now, again, in selecting it, it's going back to authentic, because I think sometimes people don't. What are we passionate about? Because I don't think sometimes we think about it. And is there any simple way to kind of for someone to self-reflect and go, I mean, you could go to Charity Navigator, but kind of go, okay, what do I think I would like to try?
Yeah, I mean, I go to some self-discovery. There's it goes back to where maybe how you grew up. What was it like with your we talked about how our parents or how we're raised. We were passionate about different areas. That's one way. That's one spot to look. It's also you can watch and you can see a lot of things that happen. Maybe if it's on the news, or maybe you're seeing something that's on social. I don't think there's anything wrong with just exploring. You could even start as wide as greatest need in my area on a Google search. And that will start to pop up. You'll have different organizations say, here's your greatest need. Now that is a wide net. You'll read through a lot, but something's going to spark that idea. I mean, if you have pets, it really could be working with animals. If you have kids, there's different spaces where you may want to be. You may want to find an organization that you can, volunteer with your children. And that may be important. And that also narrows it down. It's really, you're saying it, taking time to find where you want to be, who you are, what that passion is so important. But even, starting as a broad Google search can a lot of times help you say, okay, this is what I know I don't want to be involved in, which is sometimes more helpful on the journey than knowing exactly what you do want to be involved in.
I agree. Now I do know that we have a lot of people on here we're independents. We're, again, real estate agents, maybe builder to loan originator. There was kind of like, or a one-man business, but I guarantee there are some business leaders on here. How does social responsibility help support business goals? What does it do for a business? Again, I know you can look at the individual level, but if you have a team, employees, something like that, how does social responsibility help as far as for you and your business outside of just growing more business?
Yeah, it's a great point. I can speak about it from Clayton's perspective and drill it down. But when you think about what Clayton's goal, we're striving to be a force for good in these communities where we live and work, because that force for good, that lines up with our values of where we want to be. And those, being a values-driven organization, has a benefit from a team member perspective, because one, team members know what they're working towards. They know the goals, they know the values of the organization. They also know that they're going to be supported in their efforts to give back to the community. We see that over 71% of employees who are looking for an organization, they think it's imperative that they find a place to work that supports volunteer efforts and supports giving back. So you're not only doing things for the right reasons, because that's your values. You're leading, you're values driven, which we know has an impact on the bottom line, but you're attracting the right talent. You're attracting the right team members. You also see too, there's retention rate is important. Companies that offer some volunteer time, they see a 20% increase in retention rate with their team members. So you're not only attracting the right people, you're keeping the right people. Mm-hmm. And there's such a tie between how you treat your team members, how you treat your community. We talked about this, having that greater purpose in mind of what I'm doing for the community and for these business goals makes a difference, and how that lines up with how you treat a consumer. And we know that there's that's part of the, Clayton's vision, is knowing that team member experience and that customer experience, those are aligned journeys, and you have to treat those, you treat those the right way. And I think that was really evident when you talked about the volunteer program. Seeing that launch was really cool because that was a cool culture moment for me. We knew that we had a culture of volunteering. It just wasn't in a formalized program. So when we put that program together, you started to hear rumblings like, this is going to be good. This is going to be cool. And you're like, okay, I mean, yeah, we'll see. We talked to other companies who are like, all right, if you get a 5% participation rate over these years, you'll be doing great by year 5. Like, that'll be awesome. For us to go from in 4 years to go to 260,000 hours of volunteer time, and our team member percentage rates are at 68% last year.
Wow.
It just shows that people understood who the culture is. They know who you are. They believe leadership wants to do things for the right reasons, and they're motivated to work in that right space. And I think that culture has such a business impact. We know if we attract the right people, we keep the right people, we're doing things for the right reasons, we're going to be a real force in the business world.
Well, that's a lot to kind of take in about just kind of growing, because it in some ways I almost feel like pressure, like, oh, I've really got to choose it right, and I've really got to be part of this. So I kind of want to, you just talked about from like a company perspective.
Yep.
Even if, like, again, if you're a small company, you could have 2-3 employees, and even leading that in. And I know that, especially when we do a lot of research here on like what's it like hiring millennials and Gen Zs and stuff like that. And one of the biggest things, am I going to make an impact? And this is one way as far as making an impact, but kind of bring it back down to our individual one person business people here. Can you kind of refocus in on what it means as an individual, on what it means for both, to I guess talk about that mutual ROI.
Yep.
And
Yep.
kind of say why the individual wants to do this on their level.
I think the biggest thing is there's space for you to be involved and have a social responsibility focus in your one person business, or you got 3 people that work for you, because there is that, like you talked about, mutual ROI. When you're finding a space where you're moving forward with your goals and your values, those values that line up with your business goals, and you're making that impact in an organization, you're creating a strong connection. Those strong connections, that authentic relationship, they're going to talk about you in that positive light. You're going to be associated with that, with that organization. You're also going to, realize, I think that we talked about too, that gratitude, reducing some of the anxiety. When you're giving back, you reduce some of your anxiety. You show up better to work. You show up better to where you are. You become that purpose. You're like, I feel a purpose of what I'm doing, and knowing that part of my business success also, is giving back to this organization. And so I think through, mutual amplification of the work that you're doing, from the partner, from that nonprofit partner to you as a business person, that's really important. You got to think about what it does for you on an individual level, and then think about that community presence. We talked about volunteering. If that's asking others to come volunteer with you, people just start to associate you with giving back. And we all want to, like it said in that stat, we essentially, what it's saying is, we want to work with people that we think are good people. And social responsibility just gives you a door to show who you are as a person, and that's not only okay in business, it's promoted in business.
Right.
And I think that's really where you see that mutual ROI.
Oh, that's fantastic here, because so many times we think, oh, I got to go do this, or I got to do that, or else we haven't. We're like, well, it's just this, but how's it going to help me? Because I need time for do this, and really, it is something that you 2 birds, 1 stone.
Yeah.
So, well, Ted, that's a lot for us to take in. And what I want to do, I guarantee other people out there have questions too. So for those of you that have the questions, if you go ahead, put the questions in the Q&A so Ted can answer these questions. That way I can go ahead and get them rolling, and get your questions answered. So now is your time to do it. Gotta refresh. So while we're letting people take a moment to type in any questions I have, What are some of the main ones that you suggest people like try on, like as far
Oh,
as charities
yeah,
to work part of?
you're finding an organization that has repeatable volunteer opportunities is always a great place to start. So food banks, a lot of times they have to fill so many volunteer slots. So there's always going to be room for you to go volunteer. So a local food bank, up in Tennessee, we have Second Harvest, but that's a part of
Okay.
that's part of a broader network. Feed America. So there's a lot of Feed America, food banks around the country. Habitat for Humanity does a fantastic job. There's a lot of local chapters, and of course, they're always needing volunteers. That's a great organization. Anytime you can find a place that has, each week a set volunteer time, that's a great place to start because they've
Awesome.
got to, yeah, they kind of have that they got their ideas in order. They know who they are. They're established, and it helps you to either know like, oh, okay, I can get down with this. And that's also one if you volunteer at and you're like, I don't feel like that's a fit. If you don't go back, someone else can fill your spot.
Right. Well, one thing I like too is, like you said, you can invite people to come with you, or you could
Yeah.
ask people, "Hey, I'm looking to participate. What do you do?"
Yeah. That's exactly right. I think, yeah, that community, you're back to the community again. You're engaged in the community. Hey, I'm looking for somewhere to go. Where would you go? And if you have that true, authentic curiosity, that's going to lead and spark some conversation.
Okay, so now we got all of our questions come in. I just didn't realize this many would come in. I would have kept my mouth quiet a little bit sooner. But can you share a simple example of how even a small local initiative can create a meaningful impact?
Oh man. Yeah. I so we have when you do this at an individual level, you get to meet a lot of people, especially from a local perspective. Where I volunteer at Family Promise in Blount County, we were able to volunteer and help build a shelter, for these families that are going to be moving in. And so we do that. The shelter's done. We got that completed. Well, a family moves in, and the lady she has a baby, and so she has a baby in this shelter. That's where she's raising this child. And I think what you're thinking about there is generational impact. So one, that if it wasn't for the shelter, who knows where if she would have had that baby? Where was that baby going to then be afterwards? Well, then you think about, okay, so now there's some stability in this family. So
Mhm.
that will impact the family right now, of course, but think about the generational impact that'll have on the
Right.
child. What stability they'll be able to share with their children. And as you start thinking about that compounding impact. I think that, you can sometimes focus in on like, we want to make sure the numbers are great, but that individual generational impact is going to make such a difference with people.
Ooh,
It's
I'm
sharing
not
the
crying.
hope.
I'm not
Yeah.
crying. You're crying. Okay, just that's all I can say. Okay. Well, that's a huge story to hear. I mean, to sit there and you're right. Who knows? And just the time that you and the other people put there for that's you don't know what you do and who it's going to affect, and
That's exactly right.
that's amazing. Now, let's go with how do you recommend communicating social responsibility effort to employees to boost their engagement? Like, so if we have the owners on here, or even to other people you want to join in, because like you said, you could be passionate about this. Hey guys, here's a story I just had. I need help.
Yeah.
What are ways to promote that and
Oh,
communicate?
storytelling is such a powerful tool. Like we talked about, it's hard for people to relate necessarily with numbers all the time because like I can't envision 10,000 of anything. But what I
Mhm.
can envision is I can envision a single mom who's having a child in a shelter. I can see that. And when you start to share the stories of impact, that's what really motivates people. That's what we're doing with our team members at Clayton's. We share in these drip campaigns of, hey, here's what Family Promise is doing on a national level, or here's what Operation Hope is doing. Here's that specific story of somebody who got the coaching they needed, was able to increase their credit score, and now is mortgage ready. And when you
Mhm.
share those individual stories, I always like to share individual stories, and then if you can link to the organization site or link to a sign up site, that call to action. I mean, you can treat it almost like it's almost like you're marketing for that organization. So, hey, this is what happened, and hey, good news, we're going to volunteer there as a company in 3 weeks. Click here to sign up for your spot. But you're leading with that story. Really, it helps hit home with team members and then really too with the general public.
Okay, that's perfect. I mean, like we have the Silverton Foundation, which helps
Yeah.
kids who are in the hospitals, helps make the house or rent payments for the families. And it's those little stories. It's the individual stories are the ones that get you. Not like, oh, we've helped this many people, which is great. But when you see and hear those people's story, it changes the connection to the cause, which is
That's
great.
right.
Now, what results like retention or community visibility have you personally seen from these efforts? Let's say both at your mom and pop and at Clayton, because those are two extreme. You're talking a 5, 10 people company and a
Oh yeah.
25,000. So, what type of impact did they have on each of those two? Because we have both on here.
I think I can speak anecdotally really about dad's business, and that's where people would come up. People who were attending the event would come up and say, "Man, it's an awesome event," and like, "All right, hey, I've never met those. Are they part of your team? Who are they?" And he gets to talk about, the people who came and helped from that organization. It's like, wow, that's awesome. And so you get to, you could hear it from people who are working in, who are attending the event, but you also really got to see it from like the teams. Like I think for me, seeing, I won't name names, but seeing how you have the team, like the guy who worked for dad, really working alongside the person from the organization. They're laughing. They're working together, doing something. They're doing something together. They're both accomplishing this goal, and they're laughing about it. Everyone's leaving with smiles. We all take that group photo. That to me, they would never say like, well, because of this effort, I'm now staying. But it makes you feel good when you're leaving. You realize like, hey, we're doing this for a greater purpose. And I think, because there's parts of Clayton where I do think of it as somewhat a smaller business. These facilities and these home centers are in smaller communities. And so there's, 200 people at a facility and about 5 people at a home center. As I'm going around traveling and they're talking about their volunteer efforts, they're like, yeah, it's so great that I get to, or like, hey, Ted, let me tell you what I got to do.
Mhm.
Like, oh, you used your volunteer time. This is where I used my volunteer time. And so it becomes this way of bonding, like, oh, I did that too. So, it's on the forefront of their mind. It's cool to see, we have, there's different stickers, different swag that gets out. You see it on, pump caps as you go out. And so I think I hear it from storytelling from when I was growing up to now here at Clayton.
Okay, here's a good one, and I can't wait to hear what you have to say about this. How can you talked about amplifying? Okay,
Yeah.
how do you amplify the efforts in the community without saying, look at me, I'm out here," and be like, "Oh, look at them, they're marketing themselves, leverage it." I mean, how? Because there's a line there that
There
you've
it
got
is.
to self promote, but it's like the people handing the money homeless and being videoed, and oh, look how great I am.
That's a
So,
great question. And it's one I struggled with in the beginning of this role because, I thought, oh, asking an organization to talk about us or asking an organization to promote something or us doing it, that just feels wrong until I talked to the organization themselves and they were asking, well, can you promote, please? You got to think about the different channels that you have. So you may have a whole different channel set, a whole different audience than this nonprofit does.
mhm.
And so when you're talking, and I think it's again, you're leading it with the authenticity of that nonprofit. I think, for example, when I've gone out and just this is me personally, so this is just not my brand, it was just me as a person. If I've shared about my volunteer experience, it's like I had a great time at Habitat. It was great meeting Doug, who leads the volunteerism. I like to see Roxy, the dog that was here. Like it's just sharing that personal story, and you're talking about Habitat. And so I think when you're fully talking about that other organization, that's really the key. And you're sharing out a link to what maybe what they're doing. That is something that a nonprofit they need it. They want that. I think whenever that finally switched in my mind is knowing that it really benefits the nonprofit when I'm talking about the work being done there, or I talk about what I was able to do there. Of course, leading with the nonprofit in that story, but it helps them because it reaches maybe a whole new audience that maybe didn't know about know about the organization. Then maybe they start to research. Maybe that's a whole new funding source for them. It's, they have to market as well. I think
Right.
they, and they can't do it all. These nonprofit staffs are lean for a reason because they're helping a lot of people. And so again, that's that mutual ROI. When you're amplifying the work that they're doing, that's helping this organization too.
So I guess one of your best suggestions is definitely like hop on social media, talk about it, but only talk about it. It's about them, not
Yeah,
about you.
that's
Okay.
right. Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's I just gave 400 hours and yeah. Let's avoid that, right?
That's
So let's just
that's
talk
right.
about maybe the day was like and say, hey,
Yep.
today we did this, we packed this many bags. We'd love to have more people come. We have another one coming up here Saturday the 19th and stuff like that, correct?
That's exactly right.
Okay.
We talked about too that association. You just start to
Mhm.
become associated with that organization. People then associate you with, that's a values driven person or a values driven organization. And we know that statistically, that's where people want to do business.
Okay, last question, because I know we're pretty much at our time limit. What metrics or indicators help prove the ROI of these initiatives to like leadership or stakeholders who may be skeptical?
Mhm. So from our perspective, we work with them. We of course work with impressions. Well, let me step back. It's starting out doing it for the right reasons. And that's the one thing I'm really, blessed about working here at Clayton. We want to give back and be a force for good because that's just part of our values. That's what we want to do. What then we're also asked to do is, okay, just what reach is this getting? So we look at impressions, we look at engaged impressions as well. So not only how many eyeballs have seen this, how many eyeballs are clicking, and we really measure that internally too. We want to make sure like that internal audience, who your team member is, whether that's a 20,000 person organization to a 3-person organization, if they're engaged and they're reading that content or they understand your mission, that is just as important as what you're getting on the outside. You'll also see we do survey results within the company that show like sentiment about how they feel about Clayton as an organization, and we use that to partly track what we're doing. I think really it's if you start off like you're giving back because you want to give back and that's the right
Right.
reasons, then you start to measure some of that ancillary benefit that you're getting.
Well, I think like I guess to kind of put it in like perspective of our audience here is you you're a real estate agent. You want your broker to
Yeah.
get involved. Hey,
Yeah,
broker, can we
that's
please
right.
do this? How, kind of selling it to them. Here's what it does, and it's going to help out. Not to mention it gives exposure for this. So I think that is great because I do know the exposure works. Again, just to kind of repeat the story I said earlier, I rescued a dog, and I had people I didn't even know that saw I rescued it because I tagged the shelter in it.
Yep.
And people are like, thank you. His name at the shelter was Bobby, but it sounded too much like mommy, so we had to change it to Rex. But but people, I mean, right there. So people are now looking at me going, who is this guy that rescued this dog?
Yeah.
And that's like you said, now they're like, okay, that guy, I may want to work with him if I need his services because I know that this is where it comes from. That's to me, I think that's his. Does that make sense? That's the most basic
Yep.
ROI there because now
That's
we got a dog out of there. We got all the shelter people are happy that the dog's out, and now all these other people are happy that I didn't even know knew.
yeah.
And then,
You've got right. I think that like as you said, as we're wrapping it up, there is space for you to be authentically you
mhm.
in your values and your giving back, and that giving back when can absolutely align with business goals and it can benefit both you as a business and the community. And there is an absolute space for that in social responsibility.
Well, excellent. Well, Ted, I thank you so much. Unfortunately, we have reached the end of the time today. If you submitted questions we didn't answer, please email me at corey.knight@silvertonmortgage.com. We can get that in the chat for you. And we'll be sure to respond with Ted's answers. Ted, on behalf of our audience and all of us here at Silverton Mortgage, we appreciate you spending some time with us today. Your enthusiasm and passion are very contagious because I'm more excited now than I was I was excited at the beginning too, but you've genuinely helped us, uh, understand how we really need to be authentic and we need to
Yeah.
give. And it's not just for what we get, even though there's a mutual ROI, but it's how we feel and
Yeah.
what it means to others. So thank you very much for bringing that impact in on us today. And understand we'll continue our speaker series next year. So should be sure to follow Silverton Mortgage on all social media for more information. Thank you, and y'all have a great day.
Thanks, y'all.